Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. It is springtime here, and thank goodness the hay fever is getting better. So my eyes are more visible. Looks like I'm hiding most of the time, but not really. Today, I want to share with you the cycle of life that changes everything, and that has changed so many lives all over the world. If you listen to from all the experts that are talking about it, what this whole last 3 years have done to humanity, and to see on we have a thing called Bark here in South Africa where you ask for a coach, and so on, and everybody's got the same requests, and there are hundreds of them where the people ask for the same thing. It's like their self-esteem is gone, relationships aren't working, no confidence, all you put all of them there, all of the things that can go wrong, they're there, and they're even worse now, and they're more pronounced now because something has happened to humanity on a large scale that usually just happens to people one by one. These things, of course, it happens all over the world all the time, but this was a collective trauma that humanity had gone through. So let's take it out of the collective and take it into a personal experience, and you'll see. I'll share the screen with you so that you can have a good idea of how the cycle works, and maybe you can see where you are on the cycle. I use the cycle whenever I start working with someone, so that they can see. Well, I'll put it here so you can have a look and see where you are in this entire cycle. Okay, let me just get the screen share going and share screen. There you go. There you go. So this is the Light Express. That's my ministry, my calling, my job. This is what I do for a living, is to drive this train. And really, it's not me. I don't drive the train. I'm not even the pilot. I'm just there to guide people to get on the train. It's more like a conductor, actually, or anything else. And so let's get cracking with this. Let me see where the next slide goes. There you go. So here we have something that always comes up in threes. All of life can really be looked at through the law of three. That is just uncanny how it works, that we always find these three things. And for our basic desires as human beings, we want safety, security, and certainty. Those are the three things we have. If we feel safe, then we are in peace or at peace. When we feel safe, we can express ourselves. When we feel safe, we don't try to put up boundaries. And boundaries is a whole total thing that we will talk from a psycho-spiritual perspective in a while. Certainty is a human desire to, if I do something, then I will have some kind of an outcome. If I go to this job and I work every day, then I'm quite certain that I'll get my pay at the end of the month. If I am loyal to a business or to a person, then there would be an exchange of something, something beneficial to both of us. And then the security, of course, it is, to be able to feel secure in your job, in your relationship, and with anybody, and to have a sense of belonging, security, a sense of belonging, in that you know that whatever shows up in life really is, you are secure in that knowledge. If I can use a relationship, if you feel secure in a relationship and there's a problem that comes up, then a secure relationship would be where the partners would go, okay, we have a problem, let us solve the problem, let us work on the problem. Insecure and unsafe relationship would be where the one finds fault with the other and then blames the other and then leaves the problem. So that would be the security bit. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but let's just have a look at the next slide here. Now, the life shows up. Life for us shows up in health and wealth and relationships, those three things. Health is, of course, just health. Can you move? Do you have enough food? And you can relate this back to the safety, security, and certainty. You just take it back there if you want to. So the health comes up. Can you move? Are you maybe ill, but you can still move? That's horizontally. That's vertically ill. Okay, you get vertically. You're not doing all that well, but you can still move. Then you get horizontally ill, where you're ill and you can't do anything. So if your health then is compromised, then of course it's going to go over to your wealth as well, because then you'll not be able to, unless you have money that's making its own money, then it can threaten your wealth. Relationships at the bottom, then really is an exchange of energy. That's what we look at into a relationship, as an exchange of energy. So it's reciprocal. Supposed to be, anyway. So reciprocal relationships is giving without expecting to get, but getting anyway. That is healthy relationships. Otherwise, it's a transactional relationship. I give you so you can get. I'm putting a video up on what is love, and that will actually give you an explanation between healthy relationships and codependent ones. And it's a very interesting and a powerful revelation that I got some time ago. And said, okay, fine, this is how it works. And again, it goes down to three things. As with everything, it just goes down. So health and wealth and relationships, if we build solid foundations for those things, then life works. Then there's no problem with life. If those things are how we identify ourselves, and any one of those things break. In other words, if any one of those things collapses, your health, your wealth, or relationship, you lose all your money, you lose your job, you lose your business, you lose your health, you lose a relationship. In other words, you put your entire life into a relationship. You went into this thing and then suddenly it just breaks, or there's something that's gone wrong, or it turned out to be a narcissistic relationship. Whatever the case is, then it threatens that foundation. That foundation then starts to wobble. And when it starts to wobble, you experience a thing called what I call a lifequake. So looking at the cycle of life that changed everything. You'll see 9 steps here in this process, and the first step is the status quo. If we go back to the previous slide, you'll see if we have the 3 foundations of health, wealth, and relationships, then you can see if they're solid and they're working, then we have a status quo. Everything is okay, everything is working. It's not always working, but there's enough resources within us and available for us to fix whatever we need to fix. If you have enough wealth and you get sick, you can do something about it. If you have enough, if you have a strong relationship and you fall ill, then at least you know that there's a healthy connection to another person. If you fall ill and there isn't a healthy connection to someone, then of course that's where loneliness and isolation, all those things begin to show up. So now, let's say something happens, a partner passes away, someone, and you get that. I remember years ago in South Africa, the woman would be identified by the job of her husband. We would have a Mrs. Pastor or a Mrs. Doctor. And usually the Afrikaans people used to use that. So mevrou Doctor and mevrou Dominee. So the Mrs., her role in life or her identity was connected to her husband. If the husband dies, then she loses her identity. We build an identity around our job or the vocation that we do or the profession that we practice. Maybe we don't even like the profession, but because it's a shiny one, it garners a lot of respect with people, then the self foundation is solid. Although it's not really solid, but we think it is. Okay, so we build that status quo all on external things, mostly external things, and then when that external thing then breaks or doesn't function anymore, then we experience the lifequake, and the lifequake is where the shaking comes in. It's where you can see coming, and sometimes you know something is coming. Somewhere deep inside of you, this something is coming, something is going wrong. Your intuition begins to warn you, and but usually we don't react, we don't respond because we're waiting for the quake, and Not that we physically waiting for the quake, but we don't respond. We do not respond until the quake actually hits, and then we run away. You try to run away, or we try to hide. But when something like that, one of the foundational bits of your life then breaks, then the shaking takes place, and you become dysregulated. Your nervous system goes offline. You suffer trauma. You suffer all kinds of misfortune or whatever. That's the shaking bit. The next part is the falling, and during this falling period, many people try, like while they're falling, try to grab onto some kind of if you fall off the side of the mountain, you'll try and grab onto the roots of trees or whatever, just so that you don't fall. But the problem is this falling is not going to, this effort of yours is not going to get you back to status quo, because status quo does not exist anymore for so many people. So that's traumatic, the falling, and it can happen in lightning speed, and it usually does. Before you know what's going on, you've landed. And when you've landed, very few people will actually land on their feet. They usually land on their face at the bottom. And, it's like all this misery and the grief and the shame and the anxiety and everything is just like overwhelming when you land over there, because your sure and secure footing in life now has disappeared for whatever reason it is. Then what happens is now you're sitting there. Now everything is like uncertain. You can't go back. There's no way. And you have to make some decisions, and people ask you the most inappropriate questions, like what you're going to do. And of course, you don't know the answer, do you? Because you're down there for a reason, and what happens down there is really it's you don't know what's going to happen. There's a way of despondency almost when you hit there and you go like, oh God, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? This foundation of mine is now shattered, and everything that I built my image and my identity around is now broken. So now what to do? And there are no answers. If you think of the mystical, metaphysical way, you look down, So when you look down, you have no answers. When you lose your sight, and that is one of the main things that gets people really badly, is that the loss of vision. When you lose vision, when you feel unsafe, insecure, and uncertain, you lose vision. It closes down, because now your entire nervous system, your body, goes into shutdown to preserve whatever is left there. And it tries to do that for you. Your ego goes moggy, and it tries to protect you from being vulnerable, but you are vulnerable already. So then you sit in that. It's like a real dilemma where you can't make decisions, and that's one of the characteristics of being in apathy. It's a lower level of consciousness called apathy. There you have no energy. Massive action is getting out of bed, kind of thing. That happens. People struggle to function. People struggle to, they don't want to eat. Sometimes you get people who stop eating for months when something bad has happened. And of course, that's not good for you, because unless you still sustain yourself, then your body becomes weak, and then it gets worse and worse and worse. Then slowly but surely, say for instance, you have a relationship that someone died or whatever, or you got dumped, so then that relationship then causes you to feel insecure and unsafe. Then your health starts going, because you're not eating well, and you're not resting well, you're not drinking water, you feel like a camel in the desert, and when you have to remind yourself constantly, drink water, but you don't do that, because you've stopped thinking. And because you've stopped thinking, you can't decide. If there's nothing to look forward to, then making a decision is very difficult. When you're walking around the dark, the only thing you want to do is get out of the dark. But if the dark just stays, then you find a corner and just go sit down, and you just take the pain, you see? So, and this number 5 there, that's narcotras. So why do I call it narcotras? You see, the narcissistic human, and narcissism is a spiritual thing, okay? For me, that's how I described it. It's not just behavioral, it's not just psychological, but if you look at narcissism as a state of consciousness, then clearly it's a very much a spiritual thing, because narcissists are the same here in South America, in New York, in Tokyo, and in Sydney, Australia. They're all the same. They all do the same stuff, which then gives validity to the idea of morphogenic fields. So I'm not going to explain that to you, but basically that's an energetic field that lives at a certain level of consciousness, and at that level of consciousness, all the information, all the behaviors, all the thinking, and all of the energetics that go into being a narcissist is there, that it is available. So now you have people who live there. Okay, they might even have a lot of money, but they live down there. And why do they live down there? Because they need a validation, and a validation for them is attention, to get attention. So this is where the predators live. And I've seen it so many times where someone went through a lifequake, they land at the bottom, they land at number 4, and then they attract a narcissist. Maybe they're going through a divorce, or, you know, like I know one person who her husband died and she landed down there. Who did she attract? Poof, a narcissist. And they create a fantasy. And this fantasy is so powerful that you buy into this fantasy, you know? So you think this fantasy is going to be, this idea that they plant in your head is, this is the future that you want, and this is the person that you want in your life. But the thing is, that is not the person that you are dealing with. You are dealing with a fantasy. You are dealing with an avatar. And I'm not the only one saying this. This is all the experts on narcissism who say the same thing. Anyway, so then what happened down there is you attract these people, or they find you. They will find you. Dating sites, hello. It's the hunting ground for narcissistic people. And they will find you. They find a fragile human being, and then they use that fragility just to rake you in slowly but surely. And then, of course, boom, there you go. And you end up in that kind of, I don't want to call it a relationship. It's more like a transaction. It's a fantasy that doesn't actually exist. But that's not for now. So then you end up in Alcatraz. So not only do you have to sit with your own stuff, now you have to sit with all this presence of other people. I've seen people who lose, who went through a lifequake, then they go and find a little job. And in this little job that they find, it's absolutely abusive. You know, they work long hours for almost no money. They would literally eke out a living. You know, scratch out a living from what is available. And because there's not much available, you know, they will fall for anything and just find a little job. But that little job is never anything little, because you are sitting with other people, around other people who are in the same state of consciousness that you are. And that state of consciousness itself is narcissistic. And so you get people who, through no fault of their own, ended up at the bottom. But the longer they stay there in their lower states of consciousness, the longer they stay there, the more narcissistic they become themselves. And that's a scary thing to watch. Okay, so as you can see, there's a little line in the background that goes there up to wake up. You see there, that little line there. I don't know if you can see it. Between number 4 and 6, there's a little line going up there. That I call a ramp, okay? Because that ramp is the thing that will help you to get out of there. Now, what is that ramp? Okay, that ramp is a process of finding out who you really are, because who you thought you were does not work anymore, because your foundations that you base your identity on has now collapsed, so you've lost your identity. So we don't want to rebuild that identity because it's gone. So we need to go inside. We have to go and find within yourself, who are you? You need to be exposed to you. Okay, and you might think it's not a pretty thing, but it's actually quite astonishing to go there and to go and find, who are you actually? Who is this person? And we go through a process of saying, okay, let's start by acknowledging yourself. And for somebody down there, it's very difficult to acknowledge themselves, because all they get used to is this shame and guilt and apathy and anger and grief and sadness, and it just keeps on running. And now someone says to you, you know, what do you want to acknowledge yourself for? It can be excruciating, and that's why you need three. There's three forces that will help you to get out of this thing. You have the positive force and the negative force, which cancels each other out. And I would just like to describe it as, you have the yes force. Yeah, I want to do this. Yes, I want to do this. Then you have the no force, who's equally strong and maybe stronger, that says, no, you can't do this. And then you have these two forces fighting with each other. And at the end of the day, you have no forward progress. If you like to know about this, it's Gurdjieff as the guy who wrote, you know, a lot about that. So you need a third force in that to take that status quo again, you know, down there, to lift you out, and so that you can, you know, make forward progress. And it's also, I call it the law of somewhere in the middle. You know, sometimes we want to become a crusader against those people who did stuff to us. If they did or not, doesn't matter. So we want to become a crusader. We want to fight the reality of what happened. We want to get back something, or we want to get someone to acknowledge. And if you've been in an arc relationship, you just forget about it. But that's for a different video altogether. This is just for this. So then, what happens is when you have the third force that comes in, then it actually lifts your head in metaphysical. You know, you lift your head, so that you can start getting a vision again. When you lift your head, when you come out of the humiliation, the shame, and the apathy, then lifting your head, metaphysically speaking, and sometimes physically doing this, actually helps you. Because if you go and walk around a lot of depressed people, which it's not far to go, you find them everywhere, you always walk like this, because that is, they avert their eyes. And what I found out, you avert your eyes from life. So if you avert your eyes from life, you become invisible to other people. And it's weird how it works, but it does actually work this way. There's a couple of guys who wrote about this as well in their work. Stuart Wilde is the one name I just forgot. He talks about, in the art of redemption, he calls it, is to be able to lift your eyes so that you can get vision again. It's metaphysical, but it's also the physical thing of lifting your eyes. You lift your eyes, you begin to think there might be a possibility. You can't see it, but you can see that your soul reminds you, and your spirit begins to flicker. That's the best way I can say. I can describe that. Your soul begins to flicker into action again. It's always been there. You can't corrupt your soul. The soul is not corruptible because it's not yours. You are part of it, but it's not yours. Okay, so in fact, it's not yours because this is who you are. You are a soul. You are a spiritual being in a meat suit, and you know, you're basically a walking puddle. You know, so you're not 70% water. So when the soul begins to flicker in, you know, the covers come off, and the light begins to shine through again. We experience it as a flickering. Then you can get to the point of wake up, and the point of wake up is where you realize that there is something that we can do. There is something that is possible. There's a possibility. There's a way forward. We can actually do something there, and there must be a way forward. And just that wake up, and the understanding also, there's three redemptions that I've found. The first redemption is to realize this is how life works. You know, it's not particular for you, but this is how life works. And most of life is, unfortunately, 88% of humanity lives in that lower levels of consciousness where you get Alcatraz. And most of the people live there. So understand that this is what it is. Okay. The third redemption means that there is a way out, and you can find it. It's not hidden from you. It's not because you are a sinful human being that made a mistake and now, you know, you're being punished by being thrown in the pit kind of thing. That's not what it is, because redemption means is that you're being set free from that limitation of your own mind, because that's what Alcatraz is. It's a prison of your mind. If you have your mind imprisoned into this consciousness of fear and grief, apathy, fear, anger, even pride, then you're really stuck, and it's very difficult to get out. But then the acts of redemption starts to help you. That's the wake up. And that's the beginning to wake up. Then what happens is when you begin to develop a bit of a vision, again, you can start looking forward to something. You can have you can reclaim a vision or get a new one. The best is not to reclaim what you lost, because it's gone, but to go and create a new vision for yourself. And when you create a new vision for yourself, then, and you can do that with help, usually that does help to get some help to do that, then you can get somewhere, you can get a direction. When you have vision again, when you feel more secure that you can actually do something and do something right, then you can start getting up. Getting up is really where you begin to take the necessary actions that will take you forward. And that necessary actions, then you can align them with a vision. When you don't have a vision, there's no alignment, because you can't align to nothing. So you need to create that vision for yourself. And then I have a specific way of doing that. Is look at everything that you have already, every person that you are already, every person that you have been but forgotten about. All your skills, talents, all those things, all the achievements that you've had in your life, bring that back, put them on stage again so that you can see them. It's like looking at a play of your own life, so that you can see who you are, who you've been. Maybe you've been in a kind of, and I know narcissistic relationships do this to people, where they forget who they are, and because they basically, as Sam Bachman says, you are colonized. Your mind is colonized, and your identity is replaced with something that doesn't exist. So now you get dumped out of this thing, and it's not just personal relationship. It can be a work. It can be a job that was actually where you're surrounded by narcissistic people, or a specific boss, who used to future fake you, and you think, how do they do that? Well, they do. It's very easy for them to do. Is they tell you, okay, work hard this year, and next year we're going to do this, that, and the next year comes, and it doesn't happen, and it goes on for years after year after year, and people like, I'm going to put in all my energy, and you go and you go and you go, and then what happens is if you go and ask a question, they can tell you, grateful you have a job. That kind of thing. You can have a family member that's like that, so keep that in mind. It's not just one person to one person. So when you have that vision back, you have now rediscovered who you are, who you've been, the person that you still are, and who is that person that we can bring back onto the stage of your life. We use it like a play, and look at that person. Let that person play on the stage of your mind, and make a mind movie of yourself, where you are actually playing the role of the person that you've been all the time, but you've forgotten. And it's not making up stuff. It is who you are already. We're not looking to make up new things. We just find who you are. That's the get up part. And then the next part is the stay up. That's where you keep on doing, you keep on going. And the stay up is about resilience, and just keep on going. And sometimes resilience, the meaning that we put, is like lean against the wall and, take the bull by the horns kind of thing. That's not what it is. Resilience is being able to keep your eyes on the target and not look at all the rocks on the path. That's resilient. A resilient vision is much stronger than a strong body, because a vision that is hijacked very quickly by circumstances is not going to get you anywhere. So the resilience of vision. Right? So we go for the path. There's a guy by the name of I forget his name now. Anyway, he's got a brilliant idea. He used to be a downhill racer on bicycles, and he was like champion stuff. And he said his secret was always to look at the path. You never look at the obstacles, because those paths are not wide. there's trees and stuff all around you, and you can wipe out rather rapidly, and they go down that hill on the mountainside at a breakneck speed. But the people who are successful, the champions, they never look at the rocks, they look at the path. They keep their eye on the path, regardless of what happens around them. And that's a resilience toward a vision. That's a responsibility that you take for yourself. And then you keep on doing it until you actually see the manifestation of that prosperity that was built into you already. All right. So there are many bits and pieces around this that you have to look at and to understand, to get yourself back to that vision. Now, I found that for people to go, excuse me, they might have a Lifequake, but they don't go further down than 3. So why do they do that? It's because they already have a very strong vision, and their vision is not based on the health, wealth, and relationships. Their vision is based on who they are, and the amazing, divinely inspired human being that they are. They have a very solid identification with that. It's not their identity, because in that there is no identity. You are spirit, and you are doing life as a human being. So then, if a Lifequake happens, you're gonna get shaken, and you might fall a while, but you're going to bounce very, very quickly back up to your inspired vision, because it's inspired. It still is. You come from that. So you have people, and I've seen during the pandemic period, a lot of people, they shook a bit, and then they fell, and then they bounced back, and they went up again. And those people are thriving now to a degree. Of course, there's always the Instagram bit that people build on. You don't really see what's going on, but to all intents and purposes, you can see that, clearly you're not doing badly. I've seen people who had breakups and so on actually get back together, and their relationship is much better than it was before. It's all about, having that inspired vision on understanding who you are as a spiritual human being. When you have that as a foundation, then the health, wealth, and relationships, they are an extension of you. Okay, it is not an identification of you. So how does that, what's the difference there? Okay, so let me look at the difference. When you health yourself, let me just go back there. Let me go back there. Okay. So now you see in the middle of this triangle, there's this infinity sign, and that means that's you. So if your health, your wealth, and your relationship define who you are, then it's an outside-in identity that you build. That makes sense? So the health, I'm healthy, I'm beautiful, I've got all these things, I've got 6-pack, I actually have a 7-pack. But anyway, so you can't see it now. It's not available for viewing, maybe one day. So your health, if your foundation is your health, beauty, whatever, then of course you feel good, and you identify with this person. Wealth, for some people who build their entire life on wealth and what they can buy, the guy with the biggest car, the biggest house, the nicest place in the Gulf estate, all that stuff. If that is who you are, that is how you identify yourself by. If that thing breaks, you can imagine if something goes wrong. Then the relationships, if you classify and you identify yourself by your relationships in the world, would you want to do that? Because that's a dangerous thing, because relationships always move around. It's like a moving target, a relationship, and depends on how the other person responds and how you respond to the other person, how you create each other. Different matter for a different show. How you create each other. We create ourselves and each other by the words we speak and the intentions that we hold for each other. So if any of those 3 or all 3 of those then collapse, then you sit there without identity. You've lost your identity. Okay, because it's the outside in thing. When it's an inside out thing, then you know who you are as a spiritual human being. What you're good at. What you can do. Who that person is, regardless of whatever the circumstances are, and regardless of the culture that you're sitting in. And the internet is actually making it easier now for people to rediscover and to connect to other people where they can play their craft, where they can do their business with. Okay, so on a business level, that's something that we actually look at it and see how we can restructure your life so that you can generate channels, so that you can, from that channels that you generate, you can get an income. The world has changed, my friends. There's no more time for looking for that one job and sticking to it for the rest of your life, because there is no more something like that. We grew up with that idea, and if you change jobs more than twice in 10 years, you're a rolling stone that gathers no moss, that kind of person. That's what you were. So your wealth and your relationships with your work then determines who you are. Let me just go back here. So I've covered everything here. So the question is, where are you? Where are you sitting there? Are you still on your status quo? If you are there, then let us look at who you are really, regardless of those three foundations. Let's look at that, because when you then have a shake, a Lifequake, then you go maybe down to 3 at most, and you can bounce back. It's a bounce point, or an inflection point that you can go into rather fast. If you are number 4 or number 5, if you're stuck in Alcatraz, that is a problem for you. Then where we need to then create the ramp. The ramp is a way that you can actually take an idea of a rocket ship that takes off horizontally, not vertically. You basically take off on the ramp. You get to a point of where you reach escape velocity. That's where you have done the work on the inside, so that you can have the courage again to take off. And there are other things that you can do, like make sure of some safety and security that you can start working on, and some certainty where you can find that, and just amazing ways you can find that. So then you can redefine and refine that. Remind. Remind is to remember. Okay, and then what happens is refine and remember. When you remind something, you think about it again. Okay, so put it back into your mind, in your thinking mind, and then when you remember, it's then you have a feeling. And when you get the feeling, then you start building the security. You start building the certainty. You start building the safety. When you have that feeling, I'm not so bad. The stuff happened. We made peace with what is. We understood what happened. And it's not some mysterious thing that you're sitting in a dark room, you can't get out, and life is horrible and terrible, and now you have this massive struggle. Now you get to your place where you have escape velocity, and sometimes it's actually, if you're in a narcissistic relationship, that escape velocity is physical. Physical, you take your stuff and leave, sometimes quietly. So that by the time you're gone, and so by the time they wake up, you're gone already. So there's no shame in that, for sure. Believe me, I've seen people who have done that and saved their own lives like that. But there's trickiness in there, and you need to be very careful. So anyway, we stop sharing. There you go. So that is the cycle that changes your life forever. And you're very fortunate if it doesn't hit you. If nothing hit you over the last 3 years, especially, and you are blessed, not fortunate. I wouldn't even want to use the word blessed. I'm fortunate. I just want to say you're blessed if you really could pull through the whole COVID thing and the whole process of that Lifequake that so many people have experienced and are now struggling to get going again. And there are many, 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 many of them. As I said, I've seen on a website where people are asking questions, and the questions are all about this kind of thing. So thank you for your time, and thank you for, I don't know how long this is, but it doesn't matter. So thank you for your time. Yeah, we work in between the load sheddings, which is the power cuts that we have here in South Africa. And it's not going to be consistent at exactly the same time every time, but it'll be as the electricity allows. Anyway, many blessings. See you again soon.